Welcome to the Orange County Forum, where newsmakers keep you informed about local, national, and global issues that impact Orange County today.
It's really great to be here today, and don't blame me for the weather because I'm from Oregon. I've had a couple of people already comment. I mean, one person said, it's really nice, could you bring some more rain back? So maybe I can work on that for you next. It's great to be in Orange County. Orange County is 75% the population of Oregon. Think about that. So when we talk about issues and scale, you've got lots of scale here. You have a lot of urban issues that you're dealing with. And how I got to early childhood is kind of an interesting journey, because I was on the board of the Friends of the Children in Portland, which mentors kids from the age of kindergarten through high school, continuously. And one of the things we did a study with the Harvard Business alumni in Portland. And in that study, one of the things we looked at from a data standpoint is that for each child that's in poverty, that we don't break the cycle of that poverty in, over 5 generations, that child will have 200 descendants. Think about that. Compounding poverty at that kind of a rate is not sustainable. And so that's what really got me focusing. That, along with the Portland Citizens Crime Commission report 20 years ago that said, because of the amount of teen pregnancy, juvenile criminal justice activity, that if we don't go earlier and deeper with our young people, we're going to fail. And early childhood was the area that they looked at that said we can derive a lot of value from. So, you know, when we think about the lost human capital we have today with our young people, the impact on the workforce, the impact on our social costs, we cannot do anything different but put more focus here. And so I want to spend a little bit of time looking at some of the benefits of early childhood investments. You know, it's not just the ROI long term, there are some shorter term opportunities in savings, because each dollar we invest in an early childhood setting actually creates a real economic lift for about $2 for every dollar we spend. That's based on a national study. And I think that's important to note when we're looking at these kind of investments. So that's a big return. And we also know that we're inside the system of early child providers as they go into K-12 system. For each child, there's a net savings of about $26,000 based on other studies that have been done. And that's, you know, reduced special ed costs and many other costs that we're incurring in the system today that we don't need to spend long term. So when you look at from the bottom line, where it's Heckman or whoever you look at, these investments in early childhood are critical, and long term have a somewhere between 7 and 12 times return on investment by reducing those costs of special ed, teen pregnancy, juvenile criminal justice behavior later in life. So that's the issue. That's the economic valuation. That's why I, as a business person, believe that we need to put so much focus into this area today. And when you look at it from a brain development process, you kind of see, as these sources and studies have shown, that the sensory pathways, language skills, and even some of the early and later cognitive skill building all happens in these first 5 years. So I ask the question, if we see all of these benefits for young people in the earlier years, starting with prenatal care on through pre-K up into kindergarten to 3rd grade, why is it, if the return on investment is the highest in the education continuum in this space, why is it that we aren't investing more dollars in this space? I think it's a real challenge for us, and it's one that I think as business people and others we need to focus on. You know, by age 5, 90% of a child's brain development has already occurred. 90%. We were just at a Children's Institute luncheon a couple weeks ago, and we had a doctor come in and talk about just the whole issue of word recognition and hearing. And kids in poverty, by the time they're 5, they have a 30 million word deficit. Think about that, 30 million words less than an affluent child. Now, how do you get started right in your life if you're that far behind, 1 or 2 years behind your peer when you're going into the K-12 system? So I think it's those kind of issues that we really, really have to zero in on. And I think it's a lot of the problem is a lot of our families in need, they just don't have the tools and the methods to help stimulate the brain development for these children. And so how are we going to help them with investments that help them deal with those kind of issues? This slide shows a study that's been done by a Chicago program about what happens with critical investments 2 years of preschool. And I quite frankly think these numbers look quite conservative to me. So when you look at the factors here that they're talking about on better outcomes for kids that are in pre-K programs, these I think are very conservative. And I think the opportunity is to really increase these kind of outcomes long term. Because ultimately, I think if we do it well, what we'll find is that the bottom line is young children, when they're given the right tools in early childhood and the right support systems, which have to also carry on post-early childhood in our K-12 system and our college and career prep, when we do these things right, we're going to see our children be literate by 3rd grade. They'll be able to graduate from high school. They will be able to enter and graduate from college. They'll be able to pay taxes. They will stay off the welfare system, and they will get a good job. And the more we start aligning our investments with the outcomes we expect and quit putting it all into social costs because we're dealing with interventions instead of preventions, I think we are not winning the game. And so I think that's what we need to do, is really focus on improving these results, and the key there is going to be quality early education strategies. So as I look at that, how do you get there? I know in Orange County, you have a lot of different cities, you have a lot of different school districts, and we have a lot of different silos. And those silos have to be brought together as a connected set of strategies. And so when I think about the Oregon action and what Ready Nation and the Children's Institute have done, I think that was all about action. And let me kind of describe a little bit about the actions that we took in Oregon. In Oregon, we built an organization called the Children's Institute, which is not a service provider. It is a research, a policy, and an advocacy organization. And the critical success there is that we really looked at the needs to increase early childhood and what was the best research nationally, evidence-based research on what we could do as a state to better prepare our students for the future. And we put a lot of time into the research side. It's been a 15-year journey for us. But one of the things I think we did really, really well is we took away the short-term focus. And many in the business community, that those of you maybe in the room, you know what happens. You know, we go to the next quarter and we got to hit the earnings number, and we do some short-term things to make things happen, and we get a little higher earnings, and it helps our shareholders. Well, the same thing I think is happening in education. We're looking at little tweaks to try to get small benefits to make things happen without investing in what I would call systemic change. A company that is aggressive and has a really good management style focuses long-term. They may not get the short-term investment return that they want because they are looking at long-term investments and outcomes. And by doing that, they end up putting more dollars in prevention than in intervention. 75% of dollars put in intervention strategies with young people have little or no outcome, no effect. So when you think about that only 25% of those dollars are creating real value, you really have to go back and say, we can do better, we can invest in kids early on, because if you can get a return of 7 to 10% annually from early childhood investments, and you can get 6% return on average in the stock market, where do you put your money? That's not a literal, but it's figurative. way of saying we're just not investing enough up front. So I, as an investor, think that we need to spend more time on the front end investing. And I'll give you an example in Portland. The Portland Development Commission is an organization that looks at development in the city of Portland within the urban growth boundary. They also manage the urban renewal dollars that are inside each of the neighborhood communities. And what's happened is, in the last few years, the urban renewal dollars have been kind of locked up in the piggy bank by the mayor. That's probably good, because I'm not sure we're going to spend them very well anyway. We have housing issues, we have a lot of other issues, medical health. But one of the things that happened, I think, as we've gone in and built this ground-based action down in Salem, is we have seen people like the PDC step up and say, one of their key people said, when asked the question in a recent meeting, if you were going to increase economic expansion in Portland, where would you invest? And this person said, early childhood. How many times do you hear that in the room? So what we did is, with the Children's Institute, we also put together a significant advocacy organization called Ready for School. And Ready for School was originally headed by a businessman named Dick Alexander, who has since passed away, unfortunately. Dick, in the first year that we went to Salem, he had 100 meetings in the first year with legislators. We built an organization called the Leaders Council. And what we have is now in the state of Oregon, 50 leaders from around the state, business people, community leaders, that work with their local state senators and representatives, go to meetings in Salem, and work as part of the advocacy team. And what have we been able to accomplish in the last few years, since 2007? We've increased the number of childhood slots significantly, with over $50 million in new investments. We've been able to increase the quality of daycare. We've instituted home visitation dollars out of the state budget. And we're starting to see, because of some of the things we've accomplished, healthcare hubs around the community. So today in Oregon, we have the Early Learning Division for Oregon in the state government's education system. We have the Early Learning Council, which is made up of community leaders that are involved in early learning activities. We have early learning hubs in each of the communities that have now taken what we call promise grants, which are granted by the state in big block grants, and sent them out to communities where new early childhood centers are being integrated into K-5 elementary schools. And we have Early Learning Funders Council, which is made up of many of the foundations and larger individual donors that come together to look at places where they can strategically combine investments to have a greater impact in their early learning investments. So I would say, on balance, we've made a lot of progress in Oregon, but to do that, we had to align communities, schools, the public, legislators, educators, along a common ground. So I think it's been, from my point of view, a real success. It is truly a public-private partnership that we've built, I think, in Oregon with this organization. So I think as we look forward, we are continuing each year to develop a legislative agenda that we meet with the governor and key leadership in the House and in the Senate about what we want to accomplish. And interestingly, we just had a short session. All of those things were ratified and carried forward. But it's the leadership, I think, of the Children's Institute and working with Ready Nation, both locally, at the state, and at the federal level, that allow that to happen, because we're aligning all of the players to do the comparable work. We do use research data specifically to drive outcomes and get things done, and I think that has been a big benefit, because what we try to do when you go to the legislature, you got to simplify that message. You can't go in with a 30-page policy document, right? You've got to go in with something that's simple for them to act on. And so we usually have a 1 or 2 page brief about the specific areas we want to accomplish progress on. And we've seen that to work very effectively by simplifying that message to our legislators. So I think that's a real opportunity for all of us. And so we're going to continue that focus. And I think as we go forward, I think we're going to find that early learning opportunities in Oregon are going to continue. The key is when you have an economic downturn, the real test of time is whether or not you lose those dollars, right? That's the challenge, because everyone goes in and fights for their piece of the pie. But I think today we've built such a strong following in Oregon that I feel pretty good that we can keep those dollars deployed down there. So as you look forward also, I think, and look at down here in California, you've got the same issues. And if you use childcare as an example, I think it's a real challenge. Quality childcare. So many kids today, only about 1 in 10 are in childcare centers that are accredited. Why is that? In half the U.S., childcare costs more than a college tuition for people. We've really made access to quality childcare, where you have 200,000 kids in California on a wait list, very difficult to accomplish. And so we need to address those kind of issues, because with the challenges of family today, where both parents work and only about 70% of single mothers work, it's a real challenge for these families just to make ends meet, let alone pay the high cost of childcare. And so today I think we need to really look at not only how we support that system more effectively around the country, we also have to look at workplace practices and make sure that we, as places where our employees work and deal with their families, that we create a situation so they can deal with the challenges that they have at home more effectively. And I think there's some companies that have actually created ways to create childhood dollars, care dollars for their families as part of their employee compensation strategies. There are a lot of things we could be doing better. Because one of the things that happens is if we don't, for families that have child care problems, they miss 5 to 9 days of work annually. And so if you look at just the economic cost on the United States, that's a roughly $3 billion a year dollars that are they're being wasted, that we're not redeploying, that we're not investing wisely. So I want to talk a little bit about what quality looks like. And I want to use as the model the Earl Boyles School in Portland. This is a great, great school. 80% free and reduced lunch in East County, Portland, very poor community, large Latino population. And we selected that, the Children's Institute. The other thing we decided we're going to do is we're going to do a pilot. We're going to help build a preschool, high-quality performing preschool, in both a rural and an urban community. So we selected Earl Boyles in the urban community, and we picked a school district outside of Roseburg called Yoncalla for our rural model. And when you look at the Earl Boyles story, it's really a wonderful story. You know, we first started that study, we did a needs assessment. We went out, we didn't come in as administrators and leaders and say, this is what you need, community. We brought in Portland State University and did a needs assessment. And what we found from that needs assessment were a lot more things than just education. There were issues like housing. There were issues like health, dental, vision, hearing. There were mental health issues. And so as we started to unwind the process and look at what we had to do, we created a team working not only with the school district, where we have tremendous leadership. The principal there is the elementary principal of the year 2 years ago. We actually worked with Sun Schools, which is Multnomah County's after-school program, and the Children's Institute, and started to build an organization in that school that became what I really think is the backbone of the community. It's called Parents United. And when we got to that school, there was one parent in the parent group. So we brought in a bilingual person from the Children's Institute to help build community. And she has done a phenomenal job. Today, there were 65 parents, bilingual. Their meetings were held in dual languages, and they actually today solve problems. They work with the administration to solve specific issues. So when the administration says we have a problem here, they bring in Parents United, they work together, and they solve the problems. It is the most wonderful group of people I've worked with, and it is the true epitome of what community can be at a school. We also had to raise $7 million to put on the new wing for the preschool. And that preschool is going to do a 3- and 4-year-old half-day pre-K program, and all-day kindergarten is in that wing. So we decided, because 80% of the kids are free and reduced lunch, we're going to let every child have access. So it is a universal preschool for that school district, that school catchment area. $3.5 million was committed by the district. I co-chaired a campaign. We raised $3.5 million for the public. And we brought it from a lot of places you may not have expected. Because of the outcomes and the things that we could start to show from some preliminary work we were already doing there, the county and the city and the state put in $500,000 each. Because they really wanted this pilot to be successful. They felt if we could make this happen, we could be the template for the state. We also raised then another $2.5 million from foundations, individuals, businesses that saw the value proposition that we gave them, again with simplified messages. We put a little mini library in the school, and we focused on reading at home with the families, all of our families. We did a home study. We went in, we looked at the problems. We found that 82% of our Latino students had real significant dental problems. So we went out and got the Tooth Taxi, a local nonprofit, to come in, and we took care of all those problems. Because the thing we focused on, the most important thing, that we were going to set a culture of attendance in the school. And today, the preschool has an attendance rate of 96%. Now think about Head Starts. Nationally, many of them hover around 50%. So if your child is only in school half the time in a preschool, and we're already talking about the loss of words and just the loss of time in the seat and quality, it became a big issue. So we really put a culture of attendance there. The district decided on their own that they would integrate the pre-K teacher pay system with the union contract with the rest of the school. Huge decision, and here's why. We now cross-train kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers into the preschool and back and forth. So they're moving back and forth now. And we don't have the turnover. We have hardly any turnover in that school. So the quality of the program with what we put in place has sustained some really great results. So this has been a bit of a journey, but I would say overall, when you kind of look back, the beauty of this is at the end of the day, our first group of students that finished 3-year-old, 4-year-old preschool that just came out of finished their year in kindergarten, over 80% were at grade level. The historical average in that school was 25%. We have 9 students that need interventions. 9. The teachers were so ecstatic. They said, what do we do with all those extra dollars we got? We're going to invest them in the kids, right? All the other kids. And so I think the power of that community, and then also building a community room in that school to work on food health, nutrition, and a lot of other issues, both on the health side and on economic stability for families, has made that really a special place. Can it be replicated? Absolutely. It really can. I call it the ripple effect. Already that school's had 50 visits by other school districts, of which over 30 of them today have either built or are building integrated preschools into their district. David Douglas has added a second preschool, and I think we've had discussions with all 6 school districts in East County who want to align around a strategy focused first on those high-need schools to get this done with more schools. So I think when you look back at Earl Boyles, what a tremendous community. what a tremendous group of outcomes that these parents have achieved. Now, down at Yoncalla, we're about a year and a half behind that in the timing of when we started. It has a whole separate set of challenges in a small rural community, and we're learning a lot from that, but we're starting to see some great gains. And I think in the future, I would expect Yoncalla to be a really great example for the rest of Oregon. So I think it's been a tremendous opportunity for all of us. So what's the end game? Well, my goal is to have universal pre-K. Now, I understand that's a big cost. And it may need to be needs-based from a funding standpoint. But I do think we can make that happen. And I think we do also need to spend a lot more time on the first 1,000 days of life, that prenatal to age 3 period, in which now at Boyles we have a number of strategies in process to work with those local families to try and improve those early year outcomes. And so I think we're going to learn a lot, but there's already good evidence out there what needs to happen. But I think we need to stay highly focused on those early years. You know, the ACE factors are big, adverse childhood experiences. Many of these families come out with significant issues in their lives that impact their students and the level of stress, the impact of poverty. The Oregon Business Council, which I sit on the poverty task force, is I think the only business council nationally that's working on poverty as a strategy, how to reduce it. Because in Oregon, we're at 17%, and we want to reduce it to 10% by 2020. It's way too high, and it's causing too many families to be put at risk long term. So we need to make strategy improvements there. We need to improve the K-12 system so that when the children leave early childhood and go into the K-12 system, they don't have fade out. We all know what fade out is, right? It's when you lose the benefits of the early years. And we can't afford that. That's where I think programs like mentoring and other youth development strategies can step in to help those kids in the middle years. And at the back end, it's college and career supports like College Possible, which we brought to Portland about 3 years ago. And we now have 400 high school kids, all low income, all first generation, 75% diverse, that will graduate from a 4-year college at a 10-to-1 ratio to their peers. Because we've put in a junior-senior support system, and we take them through college for up to 6 years with a AmeriCorps mentor. And it is having tremendous results. But again, these aren't silos. These have to be connected. They have to be strategies that we're willing to work on, break the lines of communications, and create as a continuum of service, education on the inside, support services on the outside, blend those together as a collected set of strategies to make our schools and our children more successful. You know, I know California right now, coming out of a $1 billion recession out of 2008 and trying to rebuild, we all are, but there's still a lot of people being left behind, and the efforts around early childhood, I think, are one of the ways we can close that gap very significantly. I think there's like $100 million on the table in California, which creates about 10,000 new openings in early childhood if invested in by the state. And so I think working together as communities with Ready Nation and your own internal advocacy, we can move that bar and make that investment happen. It's a presidential year as well. And so, you know, it's time for us to really leverage our leaders and those that are going to be elected to put more dollars and more investment into early childhood. Because I think, you know, with this opportunity, there's a real change that we can make by putting a little pressure on those policymakers and legislators and leaders that have to come up with decisions. But we need to give them the facts. We need to arm them with data. That's where I think what you are doing here today is very commendable, and organizing that data in a way that you can bring these folks in line with your interests, and most importantly, the interests of our children and families is what's critical. The beauty about early childhood investments, as a business person, it has a triple payback. You really get to improve personal outcomes and break the cycle of poverty for kids. you get to prepare a better workplace and workforce for tomorrow, and you get to reduce social costs. We can do this. We can do it together. Thank you very much.
The Orange County Forum is brought to you through the generous support of the Orange County Register and our sustaining partners. For more information about the Orange County Forum, call 949-588-9884. The Orange County Forum is a nonprofit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.